Hello again. This video is a short video on sickle cell anemia as an example of one of the evolutionary processes in action. Sickle cell anemia is this horrible genetic blood disorder that tropical populations in Asia and Africa get. About 100,000 people a year die from it, all children. And what happens when you have sickle cell anemia is that the hemoglobin, which is a protein on the red blood cells that carries sending message for the red blood cell to carry oxygen to the body's tissues, uh, when it's abnormal, and in the sickle cell shape, it can't make it up and down the arteries, and so you feel really down. Like when you have anemia, you're dragging. You're not getting enough oxygen to your body, to the tissues of your body. When you have two of the sickle cell alleles, that's when you have the full-blown disease. Normally you get it, if you can see the Punnett square there, normally you get it if both of your parents are heterozygous and they have a normal HbA and a sickle cell HbS. And if they both have it, there's a 1 in 4 chance, as you can see there, that you get sickle cell anemia. And what's interesting to anthropologists is, and the question they had was, why does 40% of the population have this allele for sickle cell in their bodies? In other words, if it was so deleterious and it was killing folks, what is the reason it still exists in the population? Okay, and especially because it kills children even before reproduction. This kind of made a lot more sense when they realized that the same locations in which you have sickle cell anemia happening are the same locations where you have high degrees of malaria. And it turns out that if you have the sickle cell 1 allele for sickle cell in your body, you are much more resistant to malaria, because malaria parasites can't get into those oddly shaped cells. So we all know about malaria. You see the Anopheles mosquito there. If they bite an animal or another human that has malaria, and then they go and bite you as well, and then they kind of mix the blood, the parasite can move into your body, and that's how you get malaria. So if under these conditions the malaria is not allowed to propagate, you will survive it in these countries. So that's why it exists. It's what we call a balanced polymorphism. In other words, you have these two conditions taking place that balance each other out and then can explain the reasons why, in this case, we have sickle cell still existing. Within this specific environmental condition, there is an actual adaptation and proves successful if you have even something that might make you a little sick. Okay, and this is kind of hits home to me because I'm not Asian American or African American. I'm from Europe, so I don't have this. I have what we would say normal hemoglobin. I don't have sickle cells. So, what happened when I traveled to Belize 10 years ago when I was doing archaeology in that country? I contracted malaria. And so this is my story about having falciparum malaria, which is the one that goes for your brain, which is why I'm a little odd. And how this works is basically when you get bit, the parasites go into the blood cells. It takes them 48 hours to grow about 40, I don't know how many more millions of parasites within the cell, and then every 48 hours all the blood cells explode, and the little parasites run out of that blood cell that they've just eaten and then go into other blood cells. So this happens, has iterations every 48 hours. So one day you are sweating profusely and freezing cold, and you have a huge fever, high fever, and the next day you feel fine. So this is what happened to me. I contracted in Belize, drove to California, was working in California, and had it for about a month, I'd say. I was a young guy. I was 22 years old or 23. So I was like, I'll get better. I didn't know what it was. And so what ended up happening was that I was getting so sick by the end that I was in Chinatown in San Francisco on the street, and I passed out on the street. My sister was with me, who was going to Stanford at the time, dragged me down to the Stanford hospital. Now, I didn't have health insurance. So she drags me down to the Stanford hospital. I'm in there, and they give me IVs, and then essentially what they do is give me a bunch of quinine. It's called chloroquine at this point. They give me a heavy dose of chloroquine, which is the same thing that's in tonic water, that taste that's in tonic water, that bitter taste. That's the same thing they cure malaria with even today. So they give me this quinine, it's called chloroquine, and I don't feel better right away. I feel better because they're giving me a bunch of IVs. They give me the second IV bag, they take a blood sample, they come back and they say, it looks like you have malaria. Can we have some more blood? So I said, okay, I give them a second blood sample. I'm starting to feel a little bit better now. And then about an hour later, the lady comes back and says, you know what, we're not exactly sure, blah, blah, blah. We have, we need more blood to confirm the type of malaria you have. This is when a little bell went off in my head. I said, wait a second. This doesn't make any sense to me. You already have a lot of my blood. And it occurred to me that this is a teaching hospital, and they probably just wanted my blood so they could make slides of malaria for people. So I then said, I want to talk to your boss. I want to talk to your boss, and I would like all this to be a treatment to be free of charge, and I'll give you as much blood as possible. And so she goes away, kind of red-faced, comes back with another guy, and the guy says, yep, that's true. We just wanted to have blood from you, and we would be happy to write all this off. So, we see you don't have health insurance. So that's what happened. I probably now, if you have it in medical school at Stanford and you have the slide of falciparum malaria, it's my malaria. And they probably, if you think about it, they probably sold it to a bunch of people and made a lot of money off of it. And I should have, now in retrospect, I probably would have tried to charge them for my blood at that time. Then what ends up happening is the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, tracks you. So I was being tracked for a long time. And it's been, it hasn't come back, so I'm fine. And that is my malaria story as it ties to balanced polymorphisms and sickle cell.